Hey, everybody. We are officially live. This is our first live episode of the 435 podcast. I am your host, Robert McFarland, joined with my partner in crime, Jeff Watkins. How's it going, buddy?
I don't know about crime.
Partner in
Business?
business.
We're
In
not
crime.
criminals.
You're a criminal. You're a criminal
First time we're live.
in love.
Fair enough.
I don't know what that means.
Fair enough.
Well, this is what happens when you go live. You just say stuff that you don't really mean and you regret later.
Oh, well.
That's how it happens. So we're gonna be trying something new moving forward for 2026. If you followed the show over the last couple of years, we've made a couple of evolutions, and the evolution for 2026 is we're going to go live, and we are going to cover what you might have missed in news across the state of Utah and how it impacts Southern Utah in multiple aspects. But we're going to continue to cover local politics. We're going to continue to do interviews with businesses and important figures within our community. But to start off every show, we are going to be jumping right into the news and covering a few things that you might have missed that we think are important, that we stay focused on. So in today's show, what you might have missed this last week, the government shutdown, the federal government shutdown reaches its longest in history, with SNAP benefits and air traffic controllers being at the forefront of the issues. After that, we're going to be covering the Velvetwood Uranium Vanadium mine project announcing its groundbreaking, and it's going to be November 6th, located in southeastern Utah, an important development in the mining industry here in Utah. Later on in the show, we're going to be covering the redistricting efforts from across the country. We have a rare mid-decade redistricting effort in multiple states: North Carolina, Missouri, Texas, California. We're in a 7-year-long redistricting battle here in Utah, as well as other states, Indiana and Florida, talking about doing redistricting and how that's going to impact the greater political spectrum going forward into the midterms. And then in the back of the show, we're going to be covering the Federal Reserve rate drop that happened last week, as well as the latest real estate data for Washington County. That details and that data just dropped for the month of October. Now that we are here, November 5th. Remember, the 5th of November is today when we're recording. But first up, we're spotlighting the local elections. The results are not officially in, but we have a bunch of results that are populated, and most likely none of these changes are going to be overturned, I think, once it's certified. But there's some big changes that have happened in Southern Utah.
Mm-hmm.
So
we're not official, but we can probably call.
Yeah, we can call these races.
We can call some of them.
Yeah,
probably all of them, honestly.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of close races. You know, the city of Hilldale City Council, they got 2
City
seats.
Council.
Ivan City Council is
neck
close,
and neck, man.
Neck and neck the whole way. Some big changes, though. We have some incumbents that lost. In the city of Hurricane, Mayor Nanette Billings was defeated by Clark Fawcett. Vote of 67% to 32%. Clark Fawcett is the new mayor of Hurricane. Thank you both for being on the show. That was a really good conversation.
Yep.
We have a couple of city council changeovers. Lynn Excel in Hurricane is now a city council member, and David Imlay, with Kevin Thomas being the incumbent that has been removed from his seat.
And Clark was on the Hurricane City Council.
He was previously on the city council. So the interesting thing, and this is going to be true in a couple of different cities, is what ends up happening when a city council member runs for the mayor seat and is elected. The vacancy is filled by an application process. So anybody who meets the requirements, you live in the city and you don't have a criminal record, a federal, I think you just can't have a felony. So if you don't have a felony and you live in the city, you can apply to be sitting on the city council. So in Hurricane, and I'm not sure of all the cities here, but I know in Hurricane, in Ivins, in St. George, there's going to be open, basically interviews for city council members. And the city council will elect, or they will select the replacement for the city council members that have left or vacated the seat. So in Hurricane, you're going to have an open seat. So if you're in Hurricane, you want to run for city council, you can apply. It'll be after the first of the year, I believe, when they will announce the open applications for it, just like a job. And then you go and chat with the city council members, and then they will put somebody in the seat. I think if there's a tie, the mayor may vote, but I'm not exactly sure on the state code on that.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were all hot and bothered because they thought that the mayor appointed the new city council person.
And I thought that. I mean, all the information that I have, all the
and that may be true in some counties too, right?
But the
Not
state
Washington.
code, So I actually read the state code. Thank you to Danielle Larkin for correcting me on that.
Shout out to Danielle.
Danielle, thank you. The state code dictates that the cities open up the seat for anybody in the city to apply for the position. The city council votes and elects the vacant seat, and that happens if somebody moves out of the area or if they, something happens and they can't fulfill their duties. So anytime there's a vacant seat, that's the process in which they go. Couple other close races. Santa Clara mayor. Holy cow, that was a close race too. Jared Waite is the prospective new mayor of Santa Clara after decades of Mayor Rosenthal running the city of Santa Clara. Jared Waite and Ben Shakespeare were in a knockdown drag out with 54% of the vote at 1,036 votes. Jared Waite wins. Ben
less than 200 votes on that one.
Less than 200 votes was the election on that. So 54% or 55, close to 55% of the vote goes to Jared Waite, and then 45% went to Ben Shakespeare. Which is a close race, very close race. Then in the city council there, the Christina Hinton and Mark Hendrickson are both selected to be the city council members there in Santa Clara. They both get the victories. Barbara Bruno edging out Pat Campbell in Springdale as the mayor. A closer race than I would have expected. I mean, a total of, what is that, 150 votes, roughly 150 votes, 89 votes for Barbara Bruno, 66 votes for Pat Campbell. Small electorate there, but a closer race than I think.
What's the population of Springdale? We got to Google that.
Google it while we do it. With the city council members winning in another, I mean, we're talking 6 votes between first and second, and then between second and third was only 2 votes, with Noel Benson with 25% of the vote, Jack Burns with 27% of the vote. They are the new city council members, or they are the city council members for the city of Springdale. St. George mayor, this is the probably one of the biggest races in southern Utah. Michelle Randall and Jimmy Hughes. Jimmy Hughes edging out Michelle Randall with 54.85% of the vote, and Michelle getting 45.15% of the vote. A margin of about 2,000 votes, just under 2,000 votes. So a pretty significant victory for Jimmy. What do you think about that? Are you surprised?
Every time an incumbent loses, it's always a little bit surprising, especially in smaller municipal races, because most people run unopposed as far as like mayors.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say most. A lot of mayors run unopposed. So anytime an incumbent loses, it's always kind of weird.
Yeah, I think incumbents are most challenged. The more local it gets, the more challenging it is for incumbents to win, because they're just so close to their electorate. Yeah. And then the further away they get, the incumbent, because the population, the culture around it isn't necessarily as focused into such a small group. I mean, we're talking really only 18,000 votes for mayor, which is less than the 2021 election. In the 2021 election, we had 21,000 votes for mayor. Same two were running, with Michelle getting 11,000 votes. So, even though our population...
It's almost like a flip-flop from 2021.
It's a flip-flop, and we've grown. So we've grown in the community, not significantly, but we've added bodies, voters into the area, but we had less voter turnout for the mayor seat. It'd be interesting to see the total vote tally and how many submitted ballots for city council, but they didn't select a mayor. Like they just left it off.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see when we get the final results and the certified results to see, how some of those matched out. But I was surprised to see less votes in this specific election because of that mayor seat was contested.
And they haven't counted ballots that were in the time stamped before 8 o'clock. So there'll probably be a little bit more that they've got to count.
Yeah, they'll probably go through a few more. But as a percentage basis, 54 to 45%, you're going to say that's enough of a sample size that it's going to continue in roughly that same.
I think the most interesting thing is the fact that Jimmy was on the city council, and so that same process we were talking about in Hurricane will happen in St. George too.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to see, does the city council elect somebody who ran? So out of the city council race, Natalie Larson and Michelle Tanner both incumbents secured their seats again for another election. Both of them, I think, have done a good job.
Jamie gave them a run for their money, though.
There's no reason that they should have been challenged. There's no reason why they should have been ousted, right? And so the interesting thought I've had along this election process, which has changed, my main thought is, challenge the status quo as often as possible, but in the manner of the status quo hasn't done anything overtly to be removed from the position. Should we change just for the sake of change? Does that make sense? Am I making any sense?
Yeah.
So like as I've gone through this, I've thought, okay, does the candidate who have previously held the seat, the incumbent, have they done something to be fired, right? Have they done something that would argue a replacement? And I think a lot of people, at least from the existing politicians, in the back conversations, not live or off the record, most of them felt like Michelle hadn't done anything specific that would say, hey, let's remove her from office. But it's interesting to see that the electorate wants a change. And I think that's because from 2020 to 2024, there's been a lot of opportunities for leadership that maybe they felt like fell on deaf ears, that the mayor wasn't listening very well. But I had a lot of great conversations with her. I think she's definitely competent to do the job, but it'll be interesting to see how leadership changes with Jimmy being in there.
And it wasn't a dirty race, which I think is awesome, right? Like Jimmy didn't attack anybody, Michelle didn't attack anybody. From what I could see, it was a pretty
clean race,
pretty civil. I don't know, you can't see the future. Who knows what, if anything specifically will change. I think they're pretty similar in mindset, and I think they're both from St. George or around St. George. They love the area. Jimmy's a business owner. I know Michelle and her husband come from a business perspective as well. So I don't know what, if anything, will change. Honestly, the city council really is they're the ones that have the most effect, right? The mayor's not voting on zoning changes and things like that. So.
Based on this, do you think Jamie has a pretty good shot of, assuming that she applies for the city council seat, do you think she has a good shot of getting the seat?
I would assume Jamie and Greg probably would both apply for the vacant seat. Greg Aldred, shout out to Greg and Jamie. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, unless they just are done for they're just burnt out after the race. But I would assume both would probably apply. Yeah,
and it would go into what is their relationship with the existing city council members, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be Danielle and Steve
Kemp.
Steve Kemp. I don't know why I blanked it. There's a lot of Steves in the world.
Steve.
I had a lot of Steves going on. Sorry, Steve Kemp.
There, yeah.
So we have Danielle Larkin, Steve Kemp, and as the voting block with Natalie and Michelle to replace that seat with Jimmy. So, you got 2 and 2. What is the relationship that Jamie has with those? I think it's going to be an important.
Yeah,
important
and obviously
it's
nonpartisan, and there's no like specific representation as far as like
it's
geographical
partisan.
region.
It's partisan though. Like just because the tags aren't there,
right?
Right.
I think, but it's up to the citizens to determine what. Where the party line is, right? Like they're not running as a Democrat or a Republican or a
right. I mean, Jimmy
so.
was supported by the conservative wing. Whether you would say it's the Republican Party, I don't think necessarily did, but he was painted as the conservative of the two options. I think Michelle was endorsed by the Democrat leaders within the county. Jamie was also endorsed by the Democrat leaders within the county. So it'll be interesting to see how. How that plays out and how those two votes, both Danielle and Steve and Natalie and Michelle,
but I will say, as St. George continues to grow, and I've said this for, probably the last 3, 4, 5 years, is this like window, whatever it looks like, of 10 years or 5 years or whatever, really is going to set the stage for what St. George is going to look like in, 20 years or 30 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean,
And the city council got a huge.
The city has a huge role in it, but I mean, there's a lot of development land yet left, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of development land left. Population's going to continue to grow, but I think we've gone through in this amount of time. I don't know if we're necessarily going to grow any faster over than we did between 2019 and 2023. I think
COVID was a blip. I think where just a ton of people, or at least it seemed like a ton of people moved here. But
well, and there was a lot of pressure. I think the construction's going to be able to keep pace, but I don't think they're going to overbuild because of inventory. And we're going to get into real estate later on in the show.
But it seems like they're building a lot of stuff.
But they're building a lot of stuff, but there's just not enough. There's not a ton of land left still, right? And so getting really specific about what we put with the land that we have left is going to be really important. So to your point, it's going to be important that the city council is really engaged and thoughtful with what we do next.
Yeah, because once you build it, and I know you've said this multiple times, once you build it,
that's what you get.
That's what you get.
I mean, redevelopment's
so let's
almost
at least
impossible.
Yep.
So the other races, Ivan City. Let's look back at the Ivan City. I mean, we were talking within a couple hundred votes either way.
I don't know if anyone's calling that one yet, right?
I don't know. I mean, the top two vote getters are up. So the top vote getter was 1,600 votes, 1,630, and 28% of the vote. Mike Scott, the incumbent that's running. The other incumbent didn't make it out of the primaries, Lance Anderson. So you have three other that ran for the single seat outside of the incumbent. Mike got the definitive lead vote getter, which I'm not surprised about. Mike's very educated. He's very thoughtful. He does his homework. He's done a great job as a city council member up until this point. Dylan Hurt.
He might be the youngest name on the entire board.
Yeah. He's the young. I think he's going to be the youngest city council member in the county at this stage. I'd be curious to see if some of the smaller towns have younger city council members, but with 1,468 votes, 25% of the electorate, Dylan Hurt is in second place, and in the third place, he is separated by 50 votes, right? Or I guess 70 votes with 1,322, basically a 2-point margin difference. Shad Johnson's in third place. But again, Kevin Smith is sitting on the city council. He was the uncontested mayor. So they have a seat to fill there as well. So I would imagine Shad will put his name in as an individual to be considered. I would imagine there'll be 3 or 4 others that'll be considered. So it'll be up to the city council to elect their replacement. But congratulations to Dylan. I don't necessarily see this changing all that much, only because the total number of votes from this election to the last election, Ivans has grown a little bit, but the total vote numbers I don't think is going to be that big. And if these percentages stay about the same, which most of the night as it updated, it stayed about the same, I don't think these numbers are going to change all that much.
Cool.
So looks like Mike Scott and Dylan Hurt are going to take the city council seats in Ivans. Any others that you thought we needed to cover? Santa Clara was big, but
yeah, I mean, Washington City, Mayor Staley ran unopposed.
And then Ed Tracy was the only challenger. The other two, Kim Casperson and Brett Henderson, were both incumbents, and both of them one-handedly, with 37% of the vote for Brett and 39% as a top vote getter, Kim Casperson in Washington City. Across the country, though, we got a Democratic Socialist in New York as the mayor, which is interesting. There's a lot of I think there's a lot of confusion about what he claimed to say he wants to do and what he actually said he wants to do. It's interesting to watch the propaganda left and right from across the country say he wants to socialize all the grocery stores, which is not what he said, but that's the message you get. He wants, free groceries. He didn't say free groceries. He said cheaper groceries, right? He wants to raise the taxes by like 20%. I saw a bunch of numbers thrown around. He wants to increase the taxes on the top 1%, so people making over $1 million, by 2%. So, I mean, some of the things that he wants to do, he's not even going to be able to do without state support, like free public transportation. There's a lot of things that he's proposing that he wants to do that he might not even be able to get across because he needs to have the state support him in that. And I believe it's roughly, and somebody fact check me on this too, but I believe I saw it was about 30% of the city budget is really tied to federal funding at some capacity, right? So when you put out where the revenues are coming from, grants and all the funding, infrastructure bills, things like that, the federal government funds quite a bit of the New York City budget. And so he's going to have to work across state lines to the federal government. He's going to have to work with the political machine that exists in order to do some of the things that he wants to do. But I think if anything, it's a signal across the country that this is a marketplace of ideas. The country is 50 states with 50 laboratories on how democracy is going to be ran. And sometimes you're going to get somebody with one belief system in one direction, and other states are going to go the other direction. And we're going to see how it plays out. I think it'll be interesting to see how New York handles it. I'm not of the opinion this is going to go very well for New York based on historical precedents. I also don't think he's going to be able to do all that much. I don't know how much damage he really could do, but it could, and this is what I think the propaganda pushes out the most, is that this could be a huge flight of money out of New York City, that the wealthiest in New York City is going to leave, which is going to really put the city into a bad position, similar to back in the 80s when a lot of the money left and there was crime across the entirety of the city. It was a dangerous place to be, which it's already kind of a dangerous place to be even now. So
yeah, there's two thoughts that I have. The first one is, according to what I've seen, it's about 1% of the tax base pays 50% of the total taxes in New York City. So you got to think. I mean, if 1/4% of people or 0.5% of that 1% leave, that's half of.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's massive. So, but on the flip side, when I was in 6th grade, I ran for the elementary school class president.
Yeah,
6th
student
grade.
body officers. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they called it something different back in elementary school. Like I was the class president or something like that. And I didn't really want to do it. I was just like, I'm gonna see what happens. So in my speech, you gave the speech to the whole school, because only the 6th graders got to run for the offices because they were the oldest in the elementary. And in my speech, I said something to the effect of, if I could, I would give everybody in the school $1 million. And everybody just stood up and yelled and screamed and started clapping. And I was like, whoa, but I couldn't give anybody $1 million.
But
right?
everybody loved that idea.
But everybody loved it, right? And I won handedly. I won. It kind of reminds me of Zohran Mamdani. Because I just don't think he's going to be able to do most of the stuff that he says he's going to do. People just love it, right?
But he listened. He was listening to what
they want,
what they wanted to hear. That Correct. They had issues, and it was interesting. I watched the debates. The debates had very little substance as to what the issues were in New York.
Yeah,
the questions were related to the issues in New York, but the responses weren't that. And only some of the questions.
Only some of the questions, right?
They got sidetracked on Israel and all these other like foreign policy and national issues. And when you're talking about a city, a mayor conversation, you should be, what is the pulse of what the citizens within your delegate, the voter base, what's important to them? And it seemed like that's what he was listening to, and he spoke to that. And I think that's why he won, is that the competition, Cuomo, which is just crazy that he was the one, he was the other option. In my mind, I'm like, there was nobody else, a guy who got removed as the governor.
In what should be the greatest city in the world.
Yeah. You'd think that
There's
would be
no other options.
You'd think that Cuomo would have been the death of his political career being ousted as governor. You'd think he would just be out.
And then boom, he pops back up.
And then he pops back up, right? And so there was not really any coordinated, solid competition to him. So he spoke the language of the citizens in New York, that is a huge voting bloc, which were the immigrant, population of the city, which it's a huge immigrant city. It's been an immigrant city for 100 years, right? So he spoke to what was important to them, and that being the case, he won, and we'll see how it pans out. It was interesting to see Virginia get a Democrat governor. That was an interesting turnover. I mean, essentially the Democrats swept with the elections that they did.
Yeah, they flipped a couple House seats in Georgia, I think.
Yeah, and then Prop 50, and we're going to cover redistricting here in a minute. Prop 51 in California, which would set up for a redistricting map across the state, and it won by almost 64% of the vote. 63% of the vote voted to redistrict California, which gets into a whole nother thing. But interesting election night last night. Some surprises. Some incumbents lost, and. Yeah, we're going to have a new leadership in St. George City moving forward for the next few years, and we'll see how it goes. So stay tuned. We'll keep talking about it. Up next, we are going to cover the government shutdown. So we're in the longest period of the government shutdown in history, with SNAP benefits and air traffic control being at the center point for the discussion. I talked to somebody who is pretty involved. He has lived in D.C. He's moving back to D.C. He's pretty plugged into the political environment in D.C. And his claim, this was 2 weeks ago, he's like, it'll be done by November 8th. And I'm like, oh, okay, because he's thinking there's certain these benefits after 2 paycheck cycles. There's a lot of pressure coming in on people not getting paid. So what did you find with the shutdown and SNAP benefits? What's the discussion going on right now?
Here's something that's not really being covered at all on the government shutdown. Is there's 400 and some odd members of the National Guard, Army and Air that are not getting paid either. I mean, that's 500,000 people. So now, National Guard, that's not going to be a full-time job for the most part. But I thought that was super, super interesting. Today, in regards to SNAP benefits, a judge was supposed to, at some capacity, I don't know how they do it, but release half of some of the funding for SNAP.
Yeah, I think they have $5 billion in emergency funding for SNAP in case something bad happens, right? So there's an emergency funding, and the judge has ruled that we need to release a portion of the SNAP benefits through that emergency fund.
That was supposed to be today. Trump said he was going to shut it down.
He said he was going to shut it down, and then he walked it back. So in his post on social media, he said, we're not funding the SNAP until the Democrats vote on the budget. And then Carrie Ann Levitt came out and said, no, funding SNAP, meaning the program itself, is different from the emergency fund. And so he's separating the two, is that he's going to follow the judge's orders, but funding SNAP itself is not going to happen until they approve the budget. Which is so confusing, but it's the most frustrating part about Trump is that he communicates in a confusing and unclear way so often that it just gives fodder to the opposition to pump rhetoric out to confuse the masses. It's the most chaotic thing. I hate it. It's the worst thing about his. I guess it's not the worst thing about his presidency. He's got some other things that I'm not real happy about either. But it is the most frustrating part is in the chaos, he creates chaos, right? Yeah. So we'll see. But air traffic controllers, they make quite a bit of money. An air traffic controller makes a significant income. And for them to go and have a salary-based system, they get paid every 2 weeks. Most of them probably have leveraged mortgages. They have nice cars. They have payments that they're relying on those salaries to make. And most of them said we can make it without 1 paycheck, but 2 paychecks, nobody can make it. Yeah. And if you shut down the air traffic across the country, that's massive chaos. And especially after you saw the UPS plane explode yesterday. Yeah. Holy cow!
Yeah, there's some dash cam videos of that stuff.
Man, that was terrifying.
There was a guy sitting in a truck, a long haul truck, just waiting to get loaded. That the plane went right past him.
Yeah, I mean, you shut down the air traffic across the country.
Yeah,
it's massive economic volatility.
Yeah,
massive.
Yeah, I don't know if Trump would actually let that happen.
Well, but is it up to Trump?
I don't know.
It's up to Congress. I mean Congress has to decide. Yeah. They have to make it done. I guess Trump can get in there and Trump press
can put
something, but
some pressure and going back to the rhetoric part, he can.
But he's already said he's not going to do that. He did it last time because they shut down the government on his last term, and he jumps in, and he's already said, "Oh, I'm not going to do this again. We're not going to be held." I think he said held at gunpoint, or I think that was J.D. Vance that said he's not going to be held at gunpoint.
Yeah.
But
which air traffic controllers, the median salary is 144. So you start at about 75, and you can work your way up to 210, and that's a level of pay, at least in my opinion, where you're living pretty comfortable, but you're not rich. And so, like you said, those guys, they can probably afford 1 or 2 mortgage payments on their own, but it's not like they're saving $50,000 a year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, and that's most people. Most people
I
don't
would say
put
so.
a
Yeah, they
bunch
probably
of
have
money
a
away.
decent home
Exactly.
and a couple cars, and
So I think that's going to be the biggest pressure point. It's interesting because then you think, we're talking a couple million. I mean, I think there's 1 million people in LA alone that are on SNAP benefits. I can't remember the exact numbers on people that are living off of the SNAP benefits, but we're talking a massive portion of the country need food stamps in the SNAP program. And that's not the biggest mover. It's air traffic control shutting down that would move the needle. Between those two things, it's going to be a really
it's about 42 million people, according to
I was going to say 42 million, but I wasn't sure if that was
according to
42
the AI.
million.
People receive SNAP benefits on average per month in fiscal year 2024. It's roughly 12% of the U.S. population,
which is crazy. Yeah, and when you think about it, that
it's
we
crazy.
As a country, we fund food for that percentage of the population. People are worried about, we're not a communist country. Well, we're pretty close. I mean, the social programs that people rely on,
I read a compilation of some social media posts from folks that are on the SNAP benefits, and who knows what's true and what's not, but I thought it was interesting because the compilation was now I need to pay attention to how much stuff costs in the store. Right. And at the end of the compilation, it was welcome to being an adult.
Yeah.
Which I understand and I see, but
but we're talking about a cultural thing that people they've been conditioned to expect these things. They've been conditioned to do this. They've been relying on this. And when the rug gets pulled out from underneath them, the ability for them to just jump back into the workforce and start making money is just not there. And I can't help but think how many of those people are single moms, individuals that, they could go to work, but
of those 42 million, how many of those folks are significantly benefiting from, a few months of tough times, or whatever. You know what I mean?
But there's abuse that's happening within the program.
No question about it.
No question about that. However, those that aren't abusing it are going to get hit the hardest, and that's my heart goes out to all of them. And I recognize that it's a challenging situation, and it's something that we've created. But we'll see how they move through it. I would anticipate that within the next week, the government, they'll fund it. I think that it's going to happen pretty quick. So that'll be interesting. All right, up next, the Velvet Wood, Uranium, Vanadium.
I think it's Vanadium.
Vanadium mine project announces groundbreaking. So this is an old uranium mine over on the southeastern part of the state. They announced their groundbreaking. It's going to be on November 6th. This is a story that's interesting to me because it does signal this push across the country to go get back into mining and nuclear power, and how this is going to affect. And there's multiple uranium deposits throughout southern Utah, southeastern Utah. I mean, even Leeds had, I think, uranium mines in Leeds at one point. But I think this is just the first step in what we're going to see is more mining operations throughout Utah for materials going towards nuclear power. And so you did some research on the project specifically.
Yeah, so Governor Cox is he's a big nuclear guy, at least from what he what he talks about. So he praised it. I did not know it was an old mine. I thought they were just starting up new operations, but it is an older mine that was started in the 70s. It's going to create a couple hundred jobs, but it's a huge mine, and it's specifically tied to uranium. They just broke ground on a test facility in Emory County for some nuclear, a nuclear reactor test site.
A modular, so, a smaller one.
Small one. Yep, just a test facility. So that'll be tied to it. But Yeah, it's just it's south of Hanksville. It's it's a push from Trump on nuclear energy, and Utah's a part of it. It's Anfield Energy, which is a Canadian company, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But
it'll bring some jobs.
It'll bring some jobs.
And it's the first of, I think, we're going to see a lot of these types of things happening over the course of the year, or the coming years. But energy is going to be the single sticking point, I think, for the next decade, as AI, data centers, all these things are going to start bringing up the cost of energy, the usage of this. And I hear a lot of arguments saying is like, oh, well, these data centers are going to create energy sources on their own that doesn't pull from the grid. Yes, and the ability for them to set up a data center is going to go a lot faster than their ability to set up a power generating facility. And so, some of these facilities that are using natural gas generators or solar, wind, other energy creation tied to the data center, they're going to have to pull from the grid first before these energy creation, these I don't know, power, what are they called? Power plants. The power plants, before the power plants get online, the data centers are going to come first. And I think that's going to increase the cost of electricity on the grid and for the regular everyday consumer. And we've already seen energy costs start to rise. I know Rocky Mountain Power is going to be increasing their power costs, so that's going to affect half of our county and a big portion of the state. And so it'll be interesting to see what the state level does to help mitigate some of these energy costs. If you're in Dixie Power, you're in good position because they're not going to close down their coal power plant, at least for now, and that's going to continue to have lower energy prices. But it cause increased interest in people moving to south of the Virgin River and Dixie Power across.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, the trickle down from the mine could be big. I mean, they're even out the kind of talking about maybe the environmental impact. Number one, it's the mine, the infrastructure is already there. One of the reasons why it stopped is it had a huge water problem. It was discharging contaminated water into the wash. But what the plan is Anfield Energy, they've accumulated what it says is 50 million gallons of water with elevated levels of dissolved solids, and so they're going to use that water to cool some of the
equipment,
some of the stuff that needs cooling, I guess, in the mine, and then treat the water and pump it back into a wash. So they're actually cleaning the water and pumping it back into the environment. So it says 500 gallons daily into a local wash, pending plans to pending Utah Department of Energy approval for a water treatment plant. So I mean, there might be some infrastructure there for a treatment plant and bring more jobs.
And I think this is the other thing. I think when it comes to like conservation, is that this is a bipartisan push, right? Is that nobody wants a uranium mine to be pumping contaminated water into a wash that affects groundwater and the ecosystem around. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
We also don't want to just not do it for the sake of, it could have a problem, right? If in my mind, it's like, if they're going to treat the water, if it's properly tested, annually tested, we can trust that there's an oversight to making sure that the water isn't contaminated. That it shouldn't stop the thing from happening altogether because of the black swan. Well, what if, I think there's enough technology, there's enough effort to say, hey, nobody wants this to go bad, and we know that this is going to be an important money generator, growth generator, job generator, all these things we're going to need, but we need to do it in a smart way. So I'm hopeful that there's oversight there to make sure that gets done, but that it doesn't stop, right? It's this balance between conserving what we have, but also knowing what we need. And energy is going to be big, and nuclear is going to be really important. And unless you want a big solar field all over the place, I'm not sure where everybody else stands on it, but I would rather have a small modular nuclear reactor hidden out of my sight that I can't see that produces infinite energy at a low cost than thousands of acres of solar fields that are destroying all the birds, like in the road between here and between Vegas and California. That's just like, it's just crazy to look at, and yeah, kind of sad to see the environment get shifted in that direction. So I don't think that's any better. I don't know if you disagree.
I agree 100%.
All right, up next, redistricting. Okay, so Proposition 50, we touched on this a little bit. In a rare mid-decade battle over oh my goodness, I got mush mouth today. In a mid-decade battle over redistricting, California passes Proposition 50 with 63% of the vote to redraw their House congressional district maps in a response to Republican push for redistricting in North Carolina, Missouri, Texas, with Indiana and Florida also considering similar efforts as well. Meanwhile, here in Utah, there's been a 7-year battle with redistricting. So starting in 2018, a voter initiative banned partisan favoritism and pushed for an independent commission in drawing up the redistricting maps, also known as Proposition 4, was overturned in 2020 by the state legislature and repealed, where there was a lawsuit filed, and in 2025, so back in August of 2025, the Utah judge struck down the newly approved 2021 maps for violating Proposition 4. Okay, so I'm sorry. The state there's 3 elements. This is so confusing. When I was reading it was hard. The state had a Proposition 4 passed to redraw the maps. In 2020, the state legislature repealed Prop 4 and presented new maps. Then the Supreme Court in December of last year overturned the state legislature from repealing Prop 4, saying that it was an overextension of the state legislature's power. And in August of this year, just a couple months ago, a Utah judge struck down those maps and forced the state legislature to redraw new maps, okay? So we had a proposition, the state legislature changed the proposition, redrew new maps. Then the Supreme Court said they couldn't do that. Then a judge took the new maps that were presented and said, you have to redraw new ones, and now we're back to that. Then, just this last month, just at the beginning of October, the state legislature and Governor Cox signed off on option C, which is actually really similar with a few tweaks to the current legislative map, but was met with heavy pushback from the Democrat-led organizations, claiming it defies the state Supreme Court order and stating that it doesn't meet the specific criteria that the judge in August 2025 stated it must meet. So even though it was signed by the state legislature, signed by Governor Cox, they're pushing back again on the current map that's been redrawn. So we're still in this spiral. I'm sure there's going to be another lawsuit.
Yeah, there's so maybe to summarize a little bit, there's two so California, Utah, Texas, Missouri, Ohio, North Carolina, all are redrawing their congressional districts,
which they normally only do every 10 years.
Every 10 years. There's 2 of those states, California and Utah, stand to benefit the Democrats, according to BBC.
Mm-hmm.
Texas, Missouri, Ohio, North Carolina all benefit the Republicans. And then Kansas, Louisiana, Illinois, Indiana, Florida, Virginia, New York are all considering a change.
Yeah, so the country as a whole is shifting in their redistricting maps. But just to update, at least in the Utah perspective here, is that currently, based on the map that was just signed by the state legislature and Governor Cox, that current map would not shift anything. It would continue to be a Republican-dominated congressional district of the 4 seats that the state of Utah gets. The interesting fact that I thought was we're talking about 1 or 2 seats left or right, but obviously
5 in California.
Well, five, but there were some reports that said only 1 would for sure be shifted, I think, in Orange County area, but then it would make 2 to 3 other seats more contested.
Gotcha.
So it would just be a tighter race, but it could flip up to 5 seats.
Yeah.
It could.
And Utah is +1 for the Democrats.
It could be a +1 for Democrats. So we're talking about 1 or 2 seats in each one of these states, which, as the scale goes, it's going to affect the Electoral College. It's going to affect the election results at the state level. It's going to have trickle-down effects across the entire country. But it is something that we continue to watch. But it's in such the minutia. Like, we've gotten to, like, this issue in Utah with the Prop 4, the Supreme Court, the judges, the lawsuits that keep going around and around. It's really interesting to me how the public starts to tune out. Because it gets so complicated and convoluted, people stop paying attention. They're like, can you just settle on a dang map? Because this is ridiculous, right? And there's just such a small group of people that are focusing in on this, but it does have massive effects. So stay tuned for more. As of right now, the Proposition 50 has been passed, but how they draw the maps, that's still to be determined. All right, the back half, and this is the last topic we're going to cover for today is the Federal Reserve rate drop last week signals the fourth rate drop for the year and how that impacts real estate nationwide, but also here in Washington County. And we also have some data to cover because October's just finished. We're 3 quarters into the year. We're getting into the slower time frame with real estate. We have less demand. Sellers start to stop putting their homes on the market, so we're going to see a cooling off period here at the end of the year. But it's interesting to see on October 30th, the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome "Too Late" Powell is the Donald Trump name for Mr. Powell, cut the federal funds rate by 0.25%, and this is the key thing. This is the overnight loan banks charge each other to cover shortfalls in their reserve funds. So this goes all the way back to 1914 when they initially set up the Federal Reserve. The banks need to cover their reserve funds based on the loans that they give out, right? And so they loan each other, credit unions, banks loan each other overnight. They call it bedtime loans. And the Fed controls that rate. So we cut it by 0.25%. So there's a target range of 3.75 to 4%, which is over the last basically 40 years higher than the average. But we also went through almost a decade of 0% interest rate costs. So in terms of how it relates historically, it's completely out of there's no historical baseline that we can take as to is this good or is this bad, is this normal, is this not normal, because it doesn't nothing's normal anymore when it comes to the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, if you look at the plot map of how the board members of the Fed vote, it signifies that they have no clue what's going on.
Yeah, and so it's not just the chairman who does it. There's a board that votes on it, and then the chairman has a final decision based on what the board has.
But the scatter plot of how they voted in the last few years there's no precedent for anything.
Exactly. So this is going to ease short-term loan costs such as credit cards and car loans. Okay, those are the main two that the consumer is going to feel. But it is also a lever used to fuel the economy and can lead to inflation. Okay, it can lead to inflation. It doesn't necessarily lead to inflation, but it can lead to inflation. But it also is a signal of a weakening economy. So while attention on this rate is highly publicized and understanding its impacts on mortgage rates are widely misunderstood. So I get this often. Oh, the Fed's going to cut the rate. Mortgage rates are going to come down. That is not the case. So while the Fed targets short-term rates, 30-year mortgage rates are tied more to the 10-year Treasury yield, and that actually climbed above 6.2%, topping out at 6.33% today, as bond markets have priced in hotter growth ahead. So because that short-term rate goes down, more money goes into the short-term market, so stocks and bonds and other forms of investments, and it pulls back from the long tail and the 10-year Treasury yield. So when that gets pulled back, then those rates have to climb in order to encourage people to invest in those funds. Most people move between 7 and 9 years. They live in their house between 7 and 9 years, even though they have a 30-year rate. So that's why that 10-year Treasury yield looks more like what the interest rates are going. The other thing to take into account is on October 28th, 2 days before the Fed cut the rate, interest rates hit almost a 7-year low. So it tied the year low of this year at 6.1%. So 2 days before it hit the lowest, and then as soon as the Fed cut the rate, then it rose up. So the mortgage industry bakes in, knowing that the Fed is signaling that they're going to do a rate cut, because it all comes out kind of ahead of time. They anticipate what he's going to do. The mortgage industry bakes in a lower rate to encourage loans before the rate goes up, so that then when that goes up, they can capitalize on that lower rate, but then they immediately start to go back up. So they're trying to encourage. So they've already baked in the lower rate, and now it's going to go up to offset what that difference is. But what this means is actually higher mortgage payments on your home. A $300,000 loan now costs about $50 more per month than pre-cut lows. But this is also something that has bounced up and down all year long. And no matter what, the bottom line is that qualified home buyers are in a better position today than they were still 1 year ago when the rate was over 7% in November of 2024. And the active inventory is at a 10-year high. They have an abundance of options. So you have a better purchasing power with the interest rates being at 6.33, even though it's higher than it was a month ago with that rate cut. It's still not as high as that 7% was back in 2024. So it is going to impact the real estate industry moving forward towards the end of the quarter. But I imagine we're not going to see the November 2024 highs of 7% before the end of the year if we see it at all going into next year. And now it's possible, but nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can anticipate it. We're going to see how job reports come out, how the tariffs are impacting the stock market and things like that. So we're going to see. We're in a very volatile position when it comes to how all these markets interact. So nobody can kind of anticipate what's going to happen. That being said, let's jump into the data. If you got questions about the reserve rate drop or a real estate, how it's going to affect, please reach out to us. If of all these things that we're talking about, these are the things that we are most confident about and know about. So please reach out to us. We'd love to help.
I'm a simple man.
You're a simple
when
man.
When the Fed cuts the rate is an overall signal that the economy needs some help.
Yeah. Agreed. And so we're going to see how much help it actually needs in the coming months. All right. So housing market data drops October 25. Absorption rate is up year over year, 27%. What's the absorption rate, Jeff? For those who don't know, absorption rate.
Absorption rate is like turnover of homes, right? How it takes into account a few things, but basically, if no listings hit the market, how long is it going to take to sell all of the homes that are currently listed?
Right.
So if you have a absorption rate of 1 and you stop listing homes, it's going to take 1 month to sell all of the homes.
And this
huge seller's market, right?
And this average is calculated based off the last 12 months of
rolling
of how fast homes have sold, right? Yep. So based on the total number of homes sold over the last 12 months per month, this is how we calculate this absorption rate. Yep. This is the best indicator for the health of the market, is your absorption rate.
And generally speaking, like rule of thumb is 6 months, like an absorption rate of 6 is a pretty healthy market, like not a huge seller's market, not a huge buyer's market. Based on recent data, it's quite a bit more of a buyer's market in what we're in now. We're at 5, call it 6, 5.5 as an absorption rate. So we've got about 6 months worth of inventory. So we're in you can get into the nitty gritty of price points, but overall we're in a buyer's market.
Yeah, we're in a buyer's market, and it's mainly because what is the trend that's happened previously to where we are today? Those 12 months. So if you looked at if you go back to 2018, actually you could go back to 2015 because we're at a 10-year high of supply. So the number of homes that are active on the market. The last time we had 1,900 homes on the market was in basically 2014, 2015. And that was a pretty stable active inventory of that era.
Healthy market.
It was a healthy market, but it continued to fall from that point down until the lowest period in 2021, which was basically 0 months of inventory. We actually were selling more homes than were actively getting listed at the time, which is the only time we've ever had that in history, which caused the price boom. We had a lower and lower active inventory from 2015 until 2021. So that being the case, we're starting to rise in inventory. And so the thought is like, oh, well, there's downward pressure on pricing based off of where we were 2 to 3 years ago, right? It doesn't mean that we're, as a inventory goes, that my house is worth all of a sudden my house is worth less. It just means that you have more competition, and in order to get your house sold, in a reasonable amount of time, you're going to have to be competitive when it comes to the price. It's the most important thing. We have a listing out in Hurricane. We had a home that was backing a busy road that was priced less for less square footage, not by a significant margin, but the buyers were looking between our home and this other home. They decided to go to the home that was cheaper, that backed the road. They didn't care about the condition as much. Price was the most important factor in deciding whether they would buy the home or not. And that's actually happened twice with two separate houses where there's a house backing a highway, and you'd think, oh, well, they're priced less than us, but not that much less. Won't buyers look at ours and see value in the location? Well, the answer was no. They chose the house backing the highway because it was less price. So the reality is that that absorption rate year to date is 5.24, which is a 27% increase from 2024. It's still a healthy market, and you can see that by the average sale price of the sold inventory year to date. So year to date, the average home sale is $640,000. That is 0.16% less than 2024, the same over the course of the year in 2024. In 2024, it was $641,000 for the average price home sold. We have no pressure upward or downward on homes. The houses that are wanting more for their money than what they got last year are putting themselves out of what the demand in the buyer's market is actually wanting. And additionally, the median sale, the middle number on it, has been $525,000 almost every single month this year. Every single month, the median sales price is $525,000. We're seeing very little change, little to no change whatsoever. And going back to September, October of 2024, it was $520,000. That middle number has gone unchanged, which gives even more credence to the fact that that absorption rate, we don't have upward pressure, we don't have downward pressure on pricing. The key indicator to where your house's value is at is what is your neighbor selling for, or what are the homes that are similar to yours selling for, and can you be competitive on that pricing?
So really, if you're a buyer, you've got a bunch of choices, and you can probably, you probably have a little bit more leverage when it comes to negotiating power and stuff like that. If you're a seller and you want top dollar for your house, you're going to just have to wait around.
You're going to have to wait
for someone to jump on it.
And you might lose out. And
you might lose out, right? But if you're in a hurry and you need to sell quick, you've got to be competitive on pricing. And you don't need to, maybe not a fire sale, right? But if you've got a $525,000 house, that's the median home price. You're going to have to be competitive to get it sold. So not to say, again, the longer a house sits on the market, the tougher it gets to sell.
That is true to some degree, but and this segues to this other point. Last month, our year-to-date days on market was 79 days, and we've dropped to 77 days.
Yeah, so it's actually gone down.
So it's gone down because the month of October was 74 days on market. I believe that the buyers are being patient, so the sellers should match that patience. So the feeling that a buyer's like, well, it's sitting on the market a long time, maybe there's something wrong with it. I think that mentality is less apparent today than it was really over the last decade, because if homes weren't selling, it typically meant that there was an issue because home values were increasing, and why wouldn't the home sell unless it was because there was another option? My thought is the buyers are being patient. The sellers also kind of have to match that patience, and their expectations that the home is going to move quickly is not going to be reality.
Yeah.
And if they can wait, it's okay to wait. But once you get past that 90, 100-day mark, now you're really going to start to say, okay, we got to get serious about the price, or we're going to get less money than what we wanted in the beginning, right? And so, and then timing on the market too. October, November, December.
Generally a little bit slow.
Generally slow, less buyers in the market, even though inventory stays relatively unchanged.
Yeah.
I think that's the bulk of what's going on in the market right now. I think the pricing breakdowns here, I think it's something to look at. We have homes between over $3 million. There are more homes selling this year over $3 million than last year, and you would think that in an economic pinch that we're in nationally, that we'd see the more expensive homes taking longer to sell or not selling as many. That's not quite the case, at least not here in Washington County. There are less homes between 2 million and 3 million that have sold, but only by a factor like 9 homes less. It's not a huge number, but homes between 1 million and 2 million are only down 2%, where homes between $750,000 and $1 million are up 1.3%. And over the course of the market, we've had 3% more homes sell. We've had over 100 homes more sell this year than we did last year. So the demand isn't continuing to fall, right? We still have a solid number of demand. That's relatively unchanged, and I think buyers are getting more comfortable with it. It's also a reflection of what other markets are doing. We were looking at Durango, Colorado. We were looking at California. We were looking at Maryland. We were looking at Maine.
Yeah.
We've looked at a lot of these areas, and our price points are high in relation to the rest of Utah down here in Washington County, but in comparison to other areas in the country, our price points are not that much different. And so people are moving from out of the area, moving from the Midwest, they're moving from the Pacific Northwest, they're still moving from California up in Salt Lake. Second homes, investment properties, from the perspective of, it's an investment property, it's a second home, I'm only going to use it some of the time, and maybe I rent it out a part of the time. That demand is going to continue, and same with retirees. Kempsey Gardner anticipates that our percentage of our local population is going to grow over 55 years of age and older. The majority of people that are moving here are of the retirement age, and they're selling their homes for as much money, or if not more, than what they could get here. They have the cash. They bought in a lot earlier than most other people. Yeah. Home values are going to continue to stay stable, I think, for the foreseeable future as of right now.
Yeah, I think I've said this before, but I think people from all over the country, they get a sniff of St. George or Zion's or whatever on their way to Vegas, and there's just not a lot of other places you can go that are clean and have good schools and are warm and have no snow that aren't California or a million people population city.
Yep,
so
right.
There just really isn't. I mean, the closest comparison I usually make is Sedona, Arizona.
Yep. Scottsdale.
No, Sedona kind of on the a little bit west of the valley.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because of the population size, I guess.
Because of population size.
I think what I meant is that we get a lot of people looking when they look at the desert. They look at Scottsdale, Sedona.
Phoenix has 5 million people, right? It's a huge city.
Yeah.
So there's just not a lot of places you can go, and Sedona doesn't have the entrepreneurial business growth mindset that St. George does. But other than that, there's not a lot of places you can go.
That's true.
So
that's true.
St. George is the best.
Well, this is going to wrap our first ever 435 Podcast live episode. We hope you enjoyed this. We're going to continue to cover news stories you might have missed over the course of 2026, and we're going to factor in some. We're going to continue to factor in interviews with politicians, business owners, interesting people throughout the county to get you more information on that. Just a quick reminder, the Washington County Diabetic Youth Association is the Type 1 Diabetes Youth Association in the entire country. It's an awesome organization. They help several hundred kids throughout Washington County. They do a camp every year. They do education and training, helping families deal with type 1 diabetes. If you're not familiar with type 1 diabetes, and if you don't know, my son has type 1 diabetes. He was diagnosed when he was 4 years of age. Please get on to the Diabetic Youth Association of Washington County website. Donate there. You're going to help a lot of families. It's a tough disease that it impacts everybody around them. It's not just them, and it affects kids of all different ages. And we want to make sure we continue to help and support those local charities and organizations that help support our community. So we're thankful for that. And if you want more information about real estate, what we're doing, realestate435.com. Check us out, and we'll see you out there, guys. Have a great day.